Okay. All right, Shalom Aleichem, everybody. Welcome to our Wednesday class on Yalkut Yosef. We are up to the halachot of Hanagot Bet HaKiseh, how a person needs to compose himself while he is in the restroom, and while we are towards the end, and we're going to start soon the halachot of Netilat Yadayim. I want to say welcome to Giacomo and welcome to Mr. William. Bruchim habayim. All right, so let's continue from where we stopped. העוסק בתורה ונמצא באמצע בירור הלכה. If someone now, he's in the books, he's learning, and his mind is constantly in halacha. He wants to go to the restroom. Now, halacha says he is allowed to go into the restroom even though he did not come to a conclusion with the halacha yet. What's the underlining over here? Person that is a posek, take Rav Ovadia, take these gedolim, when they still don't have the conclusion in their mind, they don't let go. It's still, there's a war. Oh, this opinion, that opinion, let's bring proof to here, bring proof to there. So how are you going to go to the restroom? It's very hard to disconnect from that, with the Gdolim especially, and their life is Torah. I think one of the Gdolim said that the hardest thing for him is when he goes to the restroom that he has to disconnect from the Torah. You have to. But halakha is, what are you going to tell a person not to go to the restroom? You have to go, you have to go. As we learned, it's very bad to hold it in, and therefore that goes first. So you go. Now he talks about Sifrei Dikduk. Maybe today we don't see this so much, but back in the day, the Gedulim, the Tzaddikim, they had a lot of knowledge in Torah, and it wasn't just in actual Torah, but it was in grammar, spelling, all the rules of Hebrew, how you have to write, Dikduk it's called, okay? So they would write these rules so that people could learn, but sometimes these books of rules were based on psukim, etc. So he said those books that are there just to teach you Hebrew, if they were written by Gedolei Torah, by sages, and therefore there's a fear. He says, the way those books work is, how do you know what's the right way to say something or to write something? They bring proof from psukim. So because of that, don't take that into the restroom. So until now we mentioned that there's certain things you cannot think about in the restroom. You can't think about mitzvot, Torah, right? It says, but there's something that you're allowed to think about. It's tzedakah needs. You have, let's say you're a gabbai, you have a lot of money that you need to give to poor people. So you start thinking, I'll give it to this guy, I'll give it to that guy. Really, you're thinking about a mitzvah. What greater mitzvah than tzedakah? And you're in the restroom. Would that be allowed or forbidden? So he says it's allowed. And you're also allowed to think about what you need for Shabbat or what you need for your sukkah. You want to buy a schach, stuff like that. But in the interpretation on the bottom, he explains why. What's special about tzedakah, that specifically the example was given about tzedakah. So he says, the mitzvah of tzedakah doesn't have a special kavanah. The reason we give tzedakah is so that the receiver will get pleasure. He can buy food, right? So what do I care about the mitzvah, not the mitzvah? The main thing that's going to happen is the result. The result that this man is going to become happier right now. So since we think about the end game, about the result, therefore we are allowed to think about that mitzvah of giving tzedakah and do planning around it while we are in the restroom. What does this mean? Someone's in the restroom, make sure you are very clean. Do not leave there until you cleaned everything that needs to be clean. And he adds, after you cleaned with the tissue, also use water. It's not always convenient, but I think a lot of new places now are putting bidets in Israel, even in public bathrooms. Bidet or some sort of spritzer, the understanding that water is a necessity. Because the main way to get clean, he says, is through the water. If someone is istanis, means he's very sensitive, you're going to splash water on him right now, he's going to get all uncomfortable. He can't do that. He only uses tissue, so it's okay, at least use a wipe, a wet tissue, so that through that you can reach the result that we're looking for. It says, and if you don't have water at all, then use the dry paper, but use as good as you can. Now side halacha. It says, Maran in the Shulchan Aruch, right now we're not learning Shulchan Aruch, we are learning the Yalkut Yosef that is based on the Shulchan Aruch of Rabbi Yosef Karo. So right now we are in Siman Gimel in the Yalkut Yosef, but it's based on the Siman Gimel in the Shulchan Aruch. And in the Shulchan Aruch in Siman Gimel, he says something different from here. He says you are not allowed to clean yourself with something that can catch fire. Over here, he says, yeah, you're allowed to use a tissue. So the Yalkut Yosef asks, how am I allowing you to use a tissue if the Shulchan Aruch said that I cannot use something that can catch fire, a tissue can catch fire? He says, Kvar hayom na'agu le'akel. Today already the custom is to use it. So the custom has changed, and we see many times that the custom is stronger than what is written in the Shulchan Aruch, not because it's against him. That was his ruling. The Shulchan Aruch himself said that I'm not here to change customs. If there's a custom, the way people do stuff, I'm here to talk about something that doesn't have a custom. When there's a custom, it overrides. Tov le'akpid bekatan. Now he's talking about a katan, someone that's not bar mitzvah yet, to teach him to make sure you are very clean after you go to where you need to go. And the mother also has to talk about that with the children. And lomar psukim midivrei Torah afim yodim she'em kanchim etzmei yefeh. But however, if still he's not bar mitzvah, and you know that the way he cleans himself is not perfect, he's in the learning process, but he goes to school, they teach him pesukim, they say Shema Yisrael, he says Shema Yisrael. Is that a problem? He says no problem. It's okay that he says those pesukim and divrei Torah, even though he is not completely clean. For us, it's a different case. Until a point where some say you have to go back on your tefillah if you discovered that you were not perfectly clean, right? That's for another time. But with ktanim, we are more lenient. ומותר גם לשבת לצידם ולקרוא קריאת שמע. So you're allowed to sit next to them, read them קריאת שמע, or a story about tzaddikim, whatever it is. What's the criteria? As long as there's no bad smell. If there's a bad smell, that's already a problem. Even if the item is not in the room, sometimes someone changes a diaper for a baby and he puts it outside of the room. It's not in the room anymore. But if the bad smell is there, you cannot learn Torah. All right. Now, regarding the proper way to wipe, to clean yourself. It says, do not use your right hand. And if you are a lefty, do not use your left hand. In other words, do not use the strong hand. He says, however, some say that rule is only for the past, when people used to clean themselves with their actual hands. I guess they would take water in their hand and try to do it like that. However, today, when we use tissues, we don't have to be strict on that. So even if you want to use your strong hand, if you're doing it with a tissue, it's fine. Now, if someone is about to go, we called it number 1 and number 2 to make it more simple. So someone is about to do number 1. Lo yatil be'amida. He says, I don't recommend doing it while standing, even though, you have urinals and most people, that's the custom, he says, because they're nitzotzot. When you urine on the floor, drops are going to splash on your shoes, on your feet, whatever it is. So that is relevant to back then when they didn't have toilets and bathrooms like that. But what he says, but in our bathrooms, when we already have a toilet and it's already going somewhere else, they would used to do it on the mud, right? So that was the fear. So today, that fear is gone as well. Regarding how you go, a lot of people like to direct the current, let's call it like that. So he says, if you want to direct it by holding on to the brit, but make sure you don't hold on to the edge of the brit. He calls it the crown, the atara, because that may arouse you and bring impure thoughts into your mind. So try to avoid holding that and only hold the bottom part. Ach benasui, however, if you are a married man and your wife is with you, what does it mean, and your wife is with you? Someone goes to the bathroom with his wife. It's a concept. It means there's certain times where your wife is not allowed to be with you, and there's certain times that she is allowed to be with you. So that's what he means here. When your wife is allowed to be with you, then it's okay for you to hold it even on the crown, because this is a period where, you're allowed to be with your wife. So we're not worried. The concern is when you're not allowed to be with your wife and you may have certain thoughts now, what are you going to do? And that could lead to bad things. But he says, but from a chassidut point of view, meaning if you want to do extra, even when your wife is kosher for you right now, still try to avoid holding that. But from the halacha, it's allowed to. If you're a married man and you're allowed to be in this time with your wife, it's fine. יש להחמיר לכתחילה, שלא להכניס אוכלים ומשקים. Very, very interesting and practical halacha. Bringing food into the restroom. The restroom is a place of tum'ah. And by bringing foods and drinks inside, does something happen to that food? Does the status change? Are we allowed to eat it, drink it? So he says like this. It's worthy lekatchila to begin with, meaning the best thing is to not bring any drinks or food into the restroom, even if they are sealed inside a box. Meaning one seal ideally is not the best level, right? Therefore, some people, he has a pantry in one of the drawers in the bathroom because he can't fit it somewhere else. He made a little pantry, he puts cans, stuff like that. No, it's a problem. Do not do that. You're not allowed to bring food like that into the restroom, even if it's covered. But if someone already did it, we allow it, even if there's no hefsed merubeh, like even if you don't lose a lot of money, even if it's just something simple and you may throw it out, no, it's okay, you're allowed to. But likatchila, you shouldn't put something into the bathroom that has only one cover on it. And if you have food inside your pockets, so the pocket is considered one cover, and you want to go into the bathroom, if it's a food that you have nowhere else to leave it when you're walking into the bathroom, then I guess you have no choice and you could go in. It says, what happens if the food is the type of food that, let's say a fruit or a vegetable, you held it in your hand, you didn't notice, you walked into the bathroom. So even though that did not have a cover, but it's washable. So he says that, take it 3 times under the current, under the faucet. Once you wash it 3 times, the tumah has been removed. Just like we wash our hands 3 times after the restroom. Just so you know, the obligation of using an atlan, using that cup that we do the netilat, is when we eat the bread. But when we go into the bathroom during the day, and we want to do, soon we're going to learn the halachot of Netilat Yadayim, but we are not required to use that cup. It's good. It's always good to use that. But the requirement is not the cup. The requirement is to have your hands splashed, each one 3 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if you're going out of the restroom, you don't have to use the natlan. You can just put your hands under the current. I heard that Rav Yosef himself, that's what he used to do. Turn on the faucet, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 with his hands, and that's sufficient, right? So same thing with the fruits. That the 3 trick, I call it the 3 trick, it removes some sort of tum'ah. So that's what he says, do with the fruits. You walked in by mistake with the fruit. It's washable. It's not a chover sabzi that you cannot wash it. It's a fruit. Wash it 3 times, you're good. He says, V'tov le'achmir, but if you want to do chasidut, it's better to try and eat that item that you brought into the bathroom. So someone asked a question to Arav Budbul. Arav Budbul is the son-in-law of Rav Ovadia Yosef. He has a radio show. They ask him amazing questions. And someone said, food that goes into the bathroom, what's the deal with it? So what's the story? He says, there's a guy that in Israel, you have a lot of balconies that are connected to the restroom. From your living room, there's a restroom for guests. And behind that restroom, there's another balcony that people do their laundry. They put their laundry machines over there and they have strings and they hang their laundry. A lot of times that is also useful to store stuff because it's like a balcony that has room. So people put potatoes and onions and like a lot of dry stuff that can hold when they don't have room in the fridge. It's a common thing. So what happens on the way back, you're going with those fruits in and out from the bathroom. Is it mutar or asur? So ideally, again, we don't want to bring fruits into the bathroom. But if that's the case and we don't have where to store it, the solution that is recommended is that you double wrap those items. Double wrapping is always okay. So if you have a food inside a bag that's inside your backpack, no problem, right? If you can avoid it, it's always good. But if you can't avoid it, you have no other option. The double wrapping, you're covered. You don't have to do any washing that. So that was the solution that was suggested. Double wrap it, and you can go in and outside of the bathroom. Now, what about medicine? A lot of people take medicine that's in their drawer in the bathroom. Is that a problem? So he says, if it's a medicine that doesn't have any flavor, so I guess it's not like real food. It's just an item that you put into your mouth, no problem. You're allowed to go into the bathroom with that. But if it's, let's say, these pills that you suck on that, for throat ache and it has a flavor to it, then in that case, he says, do what I told you last halacha. What did he tell us last halacha? That likatchila, to begin with, you shouldn't bring it into there, but if you brought it in, if it has one cover, it's okay. And even if at the end you brought it in without a cover, try to wash it 3 times, but ideally you try to avoid it. Basically, things that have flavor, try to avoid them from going into the restroom. Now, how to adjust, even though it's under the halachot of the restroom, but this has to do with the bed, how to set your bed. Where do people sleep? The head goes at east, north, west, the legs. What's the right way to do it? So we're about to see a famous controversy between the Shulchan Aruch, which usually Yalkut Yosef follows the Shulchan Aruch, and between the Kabbalists, the Ari Kadosh. So what's the difference between them? Yalkut Yosef says, adjust your bed any way that you like, but ideally put the head in the east and the legs to the west. That's the ideal. All right? He says in the notes on the bottom, though the Shulchan Aruch doesn't say that. He says you are not allowed to sleep where your head is in the east when your wife is with you. All right? I guess when a husband and a wife are together, directed towards the east, it's like this disrespect towards east. What's in the east? Yerushalayim, the Kotel, Eretz Yisrael, depending on where you are, but it's usually in the east. So we give that area kavod. That's according to the Shulchan Aruch. However, now we're going to flip the page in the notes and see what the Kaf HaChaim says. The Kaf HaChaim, which is known for more Kabbalistic style, he says that the Ari Kadosh says that the head has to be towards the east and the legs have to be towards the west. So it's mamash an interesting controversy, because he says this is completely wrong and he says this is completely wrong. So that's why the Yalkut Yosef said, do whatever you want. But he says, but if you have the ability, what I recommend, it's best that the head goes to the east and the legs go to the west. Now this is for the bedroom of the parents. For the children, if it doesn't work for you, if you can't design the room that way, it's perfectly fine. The ideal is, I remember when we built our house and we had some issues with some rooms, so we asked Rabbi Shub what to do. He said mainly for the parents, it's best that the head of the bed is towards the east and the legs are towards the west, but for the children, you don't have to be strict on that or consider that. Gentlemen, B'Siman Tov or Mazal Tov, we finished Siman Gimel, the halachot of the restroom, and now we are moving on to the halachot of Netilat Yadayim. That's Siman Daled, the fourth Siman. Just to give you a perspective, there are about 30-something volumes over here of the Yalkut Yosef. We are learning...
Hashem.
Excuse me?
Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem. There are 30, but we are learning right now volume number 1. A lot of the halachot here are not halachot that people face every day. I would say maybe we have 6-7 books on Chagim. We have 5 or 6 books on Shabbat. Those we face, not every day. What we're learning right now are halachot that people face every day. And there may be another 15 volumes of halachot that are much more sheloneda, like halachot regarding whatever. Well, maybe in time we'll get into those halachot, but right now let's focus on where we are. So why did I say this introduction? Because the dinim of Netilat Yadayim is Siman Daled, the fourth Siman. And this whole first volume only has 7 simanim. So really, we are like 3/7 into the book. So Baruch Hashem, we're in a good place. Let's start. Dinim shel Netilat Yadayim. בכל יום, אחר שיקום ממיטתו, צריך ליטול ידיו במים בכלי. Every morning after you wake up, you have to wash your hands with water from a kli, from a vessel, from the natlan. ויברך קודם הניגוב. And when do you say the bracha אשר קידשנו על נטילת ידיים? It says, say it before you dry your hands. That's the halacha. The blessing goes on the drying. So it's like when you don't eat the apple and then say borei pri ha'etz. You say borei pri ha'etz and take a bite. You say al netilat yadayim and then you dry your hands. That's the proper way to do it. ואף שמעיקר הדין אין צריך ליטול ידיים בכלי לנטילה שחרית. And even though halachically it's not a requirement to do netila with the kli in the morning, right? When did we say it's always an obligation? Before we eat bread. In the morning, it's not really an obligation. Mikol makom, either way, the Shulchan Aruch said that it's good. It's good to be strict on that and to make sure that you do netilat yadayim just like when you do it for a meal, meaning use the vessel, all right? So it's better, but it's good to know. There's halacha and there's what Shulchan Aruch calls it's good to do. So it's good to do it, and why not? It's not a problem for us. We could use that kli and say the bracha properly. וממילא גם לעניין כלי וכוח גברא יש להקפיד בזה, כדי שיוכל לברך על הנטילה. וכן המנהג. And by doing that, you are also able to say the bracha al netilat yadayim. The netila, you need a force that's coming and washing your hands and the tool. So if you don't do that, you're not going to be able to say the bracha. So that allows you to say the bracha, and therefore it's good to do it and it's recommended. But if you're in a place that you have no cup and no ability to do it, it's not like you cannot continue your day. Once you do the 3, you're already You did what you need to do, just don't say a bracha. He says, okay, whoever is a place that he doesn't have a vessel, he should do what I just told you, the 3 trick, but do not say a bracha. Why? Because safek brachot leakel. What does that mean? That's an important concept. Anyone that learns halacha needs to know this concept. Safek, whenever you have a doubt, there are controversies. Some opinions say A, some say B. When you have a safek regarding berachot, should I say a bracha or should I not? Leakel. Always be lenient, say no. Let's avoid not saying the bracha, because maybe if I say a bracha that I didn't need to say, some say it's a isur from the Torah, it's a isur deoraita to say a bracha and say Hashem's name when you did not need to say it. So avoid it. Whenever you have a doubt, avoid it. So therefore, when we don't have the keli, the vessel to do the netilah, better not to say a bracha, as we said before. And he gives a tip on the notes on the bottom. He says, while we are washing our hands in the morning, that's usually the first thing you do, then you continue to the tefillah. It's good to think while you're washing your hands that by doing this, you are preparing yourself to serve Hashem better, just like the Kohen would do in the Bet HaMikdash. Like the Pasuk says, Ikon likrat Elokecha Israel, prepared towards your God. That's a Pasuk that is brought a lot for people that before they go into Bet Knesset, prepare and make sure your mind is there, your focus, don't just run in, run out. No, there's a time, Baruch Hashem, like I always see Steve when I'm in New York, a lot of times I play in the minyan with Steve. He's always there first, a few minutes before the minyan begins, relaxing, reading the korbanot. Prepare, come prepare. That's the right way. I'm sure you all do the same. All right.
Not every day.
I'm sure you all do, Baruch Hashem. No, of course not every day. Everyone has their challenges. You know, I'll say something on the side. We know that Lefum Tza'ara Agra, according to the effort that someone puts in, there's the reward. So we have people that for them, and I'm not saying that about Steve, I'm saying generally, you go to the Knesset, you have a guy that the life is smooth for him, no troubles at home, no kids jumping on him, hanging from chandeliers, everything is going well. For him to come to shul and to go back to shul, there's no stops. So for him to be there on time, it's not the same like for someone else that had to face all sorts of issues, everybody with their own issues. So of course Hashem knows the cheshbonot. So we're saying what's ideal, but of course everybody according to what Hashem allowed him, Hashem knows the calculation and it goes according to how much effort you had to put into it. All right. I also wanted to say something else about Netilat Yadayim. Even though the halacha is that whenever you wake up in the morning, you should do Netilat Yadayim, but I'm telling you, halacha le'maaseh, what Rav Ovadia used to do and what is chatan, what they recommend is the right way to do it. You cannot wake up in the morning and say, Al Netilat Yadayim, if you have to go to the bathroom. I think 90% of the people, when they wake up in the morning, they feel like they need to go to the bathroom. So it's not right to do the Netilat. You can't say a bracha when you need to go to the bathroom. The right thing to do, and that's what Rav Ovadia would do, is go to the restroom, finish what you need to do, and then when you're in a place that no longer has the restroom, because you can't do the Netilah in the restroom as well. Right? So when you go outside, kitchen, whatever it is, over there, do the Netilat Yadayim. Just be careful that as long as your hands have not been washed, and I'm not talking about the vessel, even if you do the 1, 2, 3, it's considered that they're washed, but if they haven't been washed yet, there's a danger to touch any openings, meaning the holes in the ears and the eyes and the nose, the mouth, or when you go to the restroom. So be careful not to put the hands on any holes. But other than that, go to the restroom and then go outside, do the bracha al Netilat Yadayim. That's what Rav Ovadia used to do himself. Okay. Now, regarding the washing 3 times. So I marked something here in the notes. Katav Magen Avraham, the Magen Avraham writes, שאפילו שופך הרבה בשעה אחת אינו מועיל. Even if someone says, why do I need to do 3 times? How much is it? 200 cc's each time? I'll take a liter. That's more than triple. I'll do it all in one time. He says, אינו מועיל. That is not good. Because something is dwelling on our fingers in the morning. It's called ruach ra'ah. Once someone fell asleep during the nighttime, when he wakes up, there's ruach ra'ah. There's a bad spirit on his hands. Maybe you cannot see it, but it's there. And therefore, the only way to get that is to do the 3 trick, as we called it. 1 on each hand. If you do it with an atlan, like we said before, you could also say the bracha, and therefore that is the good thing to do. And he says, העיקר כדברי הארי, שכיוון שנטל ג' פעמים בדילוג על כל יד, נקרא טומאה והלכה לה, ומותר לברך. So the halacha is like Ha'ari HaKadosh in this case, where he holds that nekra tuma ve'alchala. Once a person washed his hands 3 times, the impurity has left. It doesn't leave only after you dry your hands. Once the water went on the hands, it left. Why am I telling you this? Because there's a controversy. When should I say the bracha? Should I say it after I dry my hand because there's no more water? Maybe you could say if your hands are impure and the water is still on them, then the water collected some of the impurity, and as long as I don't wipe it off, maybe it's still there. No, Allah is like the Ari HaKadosh. Once you washed 3 times, even if some drops of impurity will stay there, from the 2nd to 3rd time, it's considered all gone. You could say the bracha al Netilat Yadayim, and that's the right way. Say the bracha before you dry your hands. How many times you see people doing washing, and they take the towel and say, Baruch Ata Hashem Asher Kiddushanu, and they're drying their hands. No, stop. Do the bracha Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzotav v'tzivah Netilat Yadayim, and only after that you should dry. That's what the Ari HaKadosh said to do, and that's what is the custom. Imen lo kli, if a person does not have a vessel, an atlan, to do the Netilat Shem Shacharit, and he lives somewhere very cold that has snow, like you guys. In the winter, there's snow. Am I allowed to dip my hands into the snow as a Netilat Yadayim? Interesting question. Some say it's sufficient and it takes away the ruach ra'ah. Do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 inside the snow. But some disagree and they say that that is not good enough and sufficient to remove the ruach ra'ah. It's only sufficient for what? To go pray. You want to go pray? Okay, you need to do some sort of action with the hands to remove the impurity. But the ruach ra'ah is not going to be removed until you use an atlan. Some hold like that, some hold not like that. And therefore, halacha is that if you do not have water and you can't melt the snow, because if you can melt the snow, you'll have water. And if you can't melt the snow, you should push your hands inside the snow. Now I'm going to ask you a question according to what we learned a couple of minutes ago. Should he say the beracha or should he not say the beracha? What do you say? I'll remind you the case. There's a controversy. Some say it's good enough, and therefore it's considered a full Netilat Yadayim. Some say no, it's not good enough. So we have a safek, we have a doubt. What's the halacha when we have a doubt?
Don't say it.
Don't say a beracha. Exactly. You learned the topic. Safek brachot le'akel. When you have a safek, a doubt regarding a bracha, you're always lenient and you do not say the beracha. I don't know, maybe if someone goes camping, and I remember when I went traveling after the army in South America, we did something called, tell you personal stories, we did something called the Y-Wash. It's a 10-day trek on the snowy mountains of Peru. You wake up in the morning, you see it, there's water that turned into ice, everything is freezing. So these cases, even though you think they're so far, sometimes they could be relevant. גם מי שאין לו כלי ויש לפניו נהר או ים או מקווה, יטבול שם ידיו. Even if someone does not have a vessel, or a river, or an ocean, or a mikveh, yitbol sham yadav. Sorry, if someone doesn't have a vessel, but he does have a river, or an ocean, or a mikveh, you could dip your hands into that source of water, and later on during the day, when you find that kli, now do it. Do the Netilat Yadayim. And regarding the temperature of the water, you're allowed to wash your hands even with hot water. But it's better that you wait until they are not boiling, meaning until they're a temperature that is comfortable for your hands to be washed in. It shouldn't be in a temperature shayad soledetbo, means when you touch the water, that's not good for Netilat Yadayim. It could be warm, but it can't be boiling. All right, so now we just mentioned the interesting halakha. This will be, I think, our last halakha of today. What happens when I dip my hands over there?
You're coming and going.
Sorry?
Coming and going. You're like freezing there, at least. That's what I see.
Oh, yeah? Oh, yeah. All right.
Now you're good.
Now I'm good. Okay, I don't know where it stopped. Let's hope for the best. But we are talking about someone that doesn't have a vessel, and instead he's dipping his hands into the mikveh, to the ocean. So he says, in the comments on the bottom, he says, להעביר רוח רעה לא סגי בשכשוך, דלעולם אינה עוברת עד שיראה עליו ג' פעמים. He says, to remove the ruach ra'ah, the evil spirit that we call that is on his hand, it's not sufficient to dip your hands 3 times. It will not go away until you use a force that comes from above. שכיוון ששכשך ידה פעם ראשונה נטמעו כמים, ותנו לו מהני, ומי הוא אם שכשך ידה בג' במקום לחולפין, נראה דאף של הזירוי מהנה. Beautiful halacha. It says, if this is a mikvah, and I take my hands, and I dip 1 and I dip 2, all right, you could say, hey, I did the 3 trick. Yeah, but the water is the same source of water. So once you made the water impure, now you can't do it again because it's not effective. It says, when is it effective? If it's a river, you have a river that's passing, and you want to do the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, since the water already moved, it's different water, then over there you are covered, and that will be okay to move the ruach hara'ah. All right, gentlemen, we will conclude here. Bezrat Hashem, maybe this Shabbat I'll see some of you in Kanisa. Bezrat Hashem.
Thank you.
Right. All the best, guys.
Isaac, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.